The verdict is in, and Hendrick Motorsports is kind of innocent? How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. Big breaking news this evening. NASCAR court was in session this morning. NASCAR versus Hendrick Motorsports, and the verdict is in. We'll talk about the results in just a few moments. First, this episode is sponsored by Motorbooks, publishers of NASCAR's first officially licensed history, NASCAR 75 Years. NASCAR 75 Years is written by top motorsport journalists Kelly Crandall, Jimmy Creed, Mike Hembry, and Al Pierce. Not only is it official, it's beautifully designed hardcover with over 300 images from NASCAR's own photo archives. This definitive history covers it all: the drivers, crew chiefs, pit crews, owners, cars, tracks, and champions. NASCAR 75 Years is available April 11th. But you can pre-order it now at Amazon.com, BarnesandNoble.com, Walmart.com, basically anywhere you can get books. It's received glowing reviews from AutoWeek, Yahoo. I'll put the links to pre-order down in the description below. Again, it officially releases on April 11th. NASCAR 75 Years. Real quick, before we get to the heavy-hitting Hendrick Motorsports news, Josh Williams, still in the headlines, he has a new sponsor, and it's a good one. Parking Guidance Systems, which is a company that installs those lights, those little sensors in parking garages, will sponsor both Josh Williams and teammate Alex Labay. I believe they'll be on Labay's car at Richmond this weekend, but then they'll sponsor Josh Williams for multiple races later in the season. Genius, absolutely genius. Way to make the most of a not so great situation, Josh Williams. Honestly, at this point, I think you can argue Josh Williams has actually come out ahead of this whole deal. Yes, he was suspended for a week. He didn't get to race at COTA, but Alex Labay drove that 92 to a solid top 15 finish. The team, DGM Racing, didn't lose any owners points, which is what pays at the end of the season. Williams has gotten to go on all sorts of podcasts. He's gotten more publicity than he's ever received in his life. He's more than doubled his social media following. He sold t-shirts for a good cause. Now he's landed a multi-race sponsor that kind of fits the theme, continues to build Josh Williams' brand identity. Great. I'm happy for Josh Williams. I respect the hustle. Dude had to sit in NASCAR jail for 3 hours a couple Saturday nights ago. Could have been going out and living his life. It's Saturday night. Could have been having fun. Instead, he was stuck in a holler eating pizza getting yelled at by Wayne Otten. So, like I said, I respect the hustle. Happy for Josh Williams. Happy for DGM Racing. I'm glad that this saga seems to have kind of a happy ending. I don't know if we're at the ending yet. Maybe this is just the beginning of the Josh Williams Park It saga. Might have to come up with a catchier name than that. That's not too bad. Park it. It works. All right. Fun stuff out of the way. Now we have to get serious. Hendrick Motorsports, remember a few weeks ago, had the hammer dropped on them by NASCAR. NASCAR confiscated the hood louvers off of all 4 Hendrick Motorsports cars ahead of the Phoenix race. The following week, they handed all 4 Hendrick cars a $100,000 fine. Each crew chief was suspended 4 races. Each driver was docked 100 driver points, minus Chase Elliott because he wasn't racing. Each team received a 100 owner point reduction, 10 playoff points each. It was massive. It was nuclear. Both Hendrick and NASCAR immediately went on the defensive. Hendrick saying, hey, we received inconsistent communication from NASCAR. The louvers were taken off before they were ever used in a race. The penalty was way too harsh. Meanwhile, NASCAR said, hey, the rulebook is black and white. Do not mess with a single source part. Hendrick Motorsports obviously did, hence the massive penalty. Both NASCAR and Hendrick Motorsports presented their arguments in front of an independent appeals panel, a 3-person panel that was reportedly made up of Kelly Houseby, Dixon Johnson, and Bill Lester. Both sides pleaded their case, and tonight, an official decision came down. This was the official statement that was released. The National Motorsports Appeals Panel ruled Wednesday to amend the L2 level penalties issued to Hendrick Motorsports for unapproved parts modifications entering the March 12th weekend at Phoenix Raceway. The decision upholds the fines of $100,000 issued to the numbers 5, 9, 24, and 48 NASCAR Cup Series teams respectively, as well as the 4 race suspensions handed down to the 4 crew chiefs. However, each team is restored 100 owners points and 10 playoff points. Kyle Larson, William Byron, and Alex Bowman received the same points back from the initial reduction. NASCAR Xfinity Series regular Josh Berry drove the number 9 Chevrolet at Phoenix in place of the injured Chase Elliott and was not penalized as he does not compete for Cup points. Cliff Daniels, Alan Gustafson, Rudy Fugle, and Blake Harris are eligible to return to their respective pit boxes for the Martinsville race weekend. While the organization chose to appeal the penalties, the team elected to keep its 4 crew chiefs sidelined for the Cup events at Atlanta Motor Speedway and Circuit of the Americas. All right, to summarize, all 4 crew chiefs will continue to be suspended for the next 2 races. They've already served the first 2 weeks of their suspension, so that part of the penalty has been upheld. The $100,000 fine each, so $400,000 total, that's staying. But the most important part of this penalty, the points, have been fully rescinded. All 100 driver-owner points have been given back to the teams that lost them. The playoff points that everyone lost have also been returned. This means Alex Bowman now shoots back to the top of the point standings. He is now your regular season points leader once again. William Byron, I believe, now sits in 3rd in the regular season standings, and Kyle Larson is 8th or 9th, something like that. This is a huge, huge win, a big fat dub for Hendrick Motorsports. There's really no other way to say it. Yeah, $400,000, they'll feel that, they'll notice that. That'll be a little blip in the checkbook. Losing your crew chief for a few weeks, yeah, that stinks, sure, but not the end of the world. The points were the most valuable part of this equation, and they got them all back. Every single one of them. I want to make this clear once again. This is not NASCAR going back on their own decision. This was an independent motorsport appeals panel. I read you the names. They do not work for NASCAR. An independent body, an independent group listened to NASCAR's argument, they listened to Hendrick's argument, and they kind of sided with both, but sort of Hendrick. Let's get into that because that is confusing. The appeals panel is basically saying, yeah, technically, Hendrick, y'all broke the rules, but you didn't break them as badly as other teams have in the past, so we're gonna give you some of the penalty back. It's weird because if Hendrick was able to show them evidence that NASCAR communicated incorrectly with the team, if Hendrick was able to successfully argue that the louvers were caught before the race, before qualifying, if Hendrick's arguments were successful, why wasn't the whole penalty rescinded? You see what I mean? If there were any holes in Hendrick's argument, it's like a call in football. You need enough evidence to overturn. The call on the field should stand, right? 100 points, $100,000, the whole shebang. It is hard to comment on this because we don't know what evidence Hendrick Motorsports presented in court. It's just the fact that they rescinded part of the penalty. That's the part that's sticking with me. It's like they're admitting Hendrick did something wrong, but it wasn't as wrong as what other teams have done in the past. I guess the appeals panel probably focused in on the fact that the louvers were taken before the race. That's the big difference between the Hendrick penalty and, say, what Brad Keselowski got slapped with early last year, about a year ago. Remember, a year ago, last March, Brad Keselowski and RFK got hit with the exact same penalty. $100,000, 100 points, suspensions, the whole thing, because NASCAR took their car back to the R&D center after the Atlanta race and found that the team had improperly modified a single source part. That was post-race, which means the improperly modified part was used in competition. The difference, I guess, here is that Hendrick's illegal louvers were not used in competition. They were caught before qualifying even. So maybe that's why the appeals panel is choosing to play both sides, but mostly Hendrick's side. Yeah, the louvers were illegal. Sure, maybe NASCAR's communication wasn't the clearest, but because you didn't use them in a race, they were not used in competition, we'll lighten the penalty. That's the only justification I can think of, and I'm not sure I fully agree with that justification, honestly. If the parts were illegal and were intended to be used in competition, I feel like the penalty should probably stick. It's a harsh penalty because these penalties have to be harsh with the next gen. That's the bigger story here. NASCAR needs to regain some authority. They have lost way too many appeals in the past year or so. In fact, I saw this tweet from NASCARman_RR on Twitter, great follow, and they tweeted, "The appeals panel has been generous in reducing the severity of several penalties over the last 15 months. And he mentions last January, they completely rescinded the massive Mike Harmon racing testing fine. Matt Crafton Darlington DQ was overturned. Jeremy Clements, remember his Daytona winning engine was found to be illegal. I think there was an issue with like the intake manifold or something. Appeals panel rescinded that penalty as well. The William Byron, Denny Hamlin incident at Texas, and now today, NASCAR is trying to enforce their rulebook, but this independent appeals panel often doesn't agree with them. That's a tough spot to be in right now because the point of officiating this next-gen car so strictly is to cut costs, is to keep teams from spending in those gray areas, to find little minuscule advantages, modify this part slightly, modify that part. The point of the strict penalties is to deter any of that. But if the appeals panel is now showing all the teams in the garage that there are loopholes, potentially. They may be hard to find, but they're there. Boom. The big teams are going to start spending out the wazoo once again because now there's some level of precedent that an L2 penalty, an illegal modification penalty, could be rescinded. or amended. Again, not totally rescinded. $400,000 is a pretty big fine, even for Hendrick Motorsports, but it's not points. And the points were the biggest and most valuable piece of this entire equation. I don't know how I feel about it. I do believe this Hendrick instance is different than Keselowski's penalty last year, McDowell's penalty, Kevin Harvick's penalty last year. It is different. The infraction was found before the race. The illegal parts were not used in an event. I do think that's a difference, but should that result in them getting all their points back? Man, I don't know. I'll be really curious to see how Justin Haley and colleagues' appeal goes next week, because they're appealing pretty much the exact same thing, and it'll probably be a different appeals panel. Maybe NASCAR will bring new arguments knowing they lost this one. We'll see, but I imagine colleague probably wins their appeal too. And then Denny Hamlin's got his appeal for a more behavioral penalty. There's a chance he could win that one. NASCAR could go 0 for 3 in the next week on appeals. That would be a tough look for the sanctioning body, for the enforcers. NASCAR's authority is in serious doubt right now. Share your thoughts, your initial reactions to this news that the Hendrick Motorsports points penalty has been fully rescinded. The fines, the suspensions, they're still there, but those will be forgot about before long. The points sticking around, that is huge. That has year-long implications. Leave your thoughts, leave a comment down below. As of the time I'm recording this, I haven't seen if Daniel Suarez got a penalty yet for a post-race coda. I think there's a good chance he will. We'll talk about that and other news tomorrow. But first, if you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave it a like. If you're new, hit that subscribe button. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for your very generous support. Like I said, I'll be back tomorrow with likely another video, probably talking about penalties once again. But thank you so much for watching this one. I'll see you again very soon. Take it easy, y'all.